What's your favorite space fact? You could survive 90 seconds unprotected in space, but a chimpanzee can last up to 3 minutes. Return to Mark. Reject Earth. After traveling since 1977, Voyager 1 has now reached about 20 light hours distance from the sun. Vast does not begin to describe the universe. Saturn's tiny moon Enceladus has volcanoes that spew ice particles at speeds faster than the escape velocity. The particles leave Enceladus' atmosphere and get pulled into Saturn's ring system, forming the E-ring. There are 2 confirmed oceans in the solar system, one on Earth and one on Saturn's moon Titan. The biggest difference is Titan is about -180 C. The ocean is liquid methane. It even has waves that get as high as, wait for it, a couple centimeters. What if I were to jump into it and make a splash? It would be a tsunami of titanic proportions. Oh, and you'd die. Neptune was discovered using math. A man named Alexis Bavard made some predictions on Uranus's future position using Newton's laws of gravity, but when it was later observed it was found to be slightly off. Urbain Le Verrier found that, if he assumed there was another planet further out, the discrepancy would be explained and used math to predict where it could be found. Finally, a man named Johann Gaul looked in the spot Le Verrier specified, and lo and behold, there was Neptune. We actually don't know who discovered Neptune first either. There were 2 mathematicians and 2 different observers who both say they found it first. Vote them both off just to be safe. Neutron stars are so dense that a teaspoon of material from one would weigh around 10 million tons. That's nothing. The deeper you get into a neutron star, the stranger the matter becomes. You end up with layers of, in order, nuclear spaghetti, nuclear lasagna, nuclear bucatini, and then a nuclear Swiss cheese. Based on the compression of neutrons from a quasi-liquid state into solid ice forms by superlative pressures near the heart of the star, just outside the point where they would be pressed into a singularity. Now there are some cool sounding band/album names. The sun loses about 5 million tons of mass every second, or about 174 trillion tons of mass every year. At that rate it's going to run out. I mean, in a few billion years. But still, the sun has 5 billion more years or so to live. In 1 billion years, its luminosity and temperature will rise so much that all life on Earth will die. Near the end of its lifespan, the sun begins fusing helium instead of hydrogen, resulting in it expanding beyond the orbits of Mercury and Venus, and then releasing its outer layers, leaving behind only a small white dwarf star. Most of the visible stars in the night sky are binary stars, 2 stars orbiting each other. Sometimes I get envious of our future descendants who will get to set foot on a planet in a multi-star system. They'll get to see many sunsets, or no sunsets. If it makes you feel any better, there is a non-negligible chance that humanity will never escape our solar system, and therefore you have no one to be envious of. Jupiter has over 70 moons. Jupiter and a bunch of them are named after the god Jupiter/Zeus's many sex friends, Io, Europa, Callisto, Ganymede. There are clouds of alcohol floating in space. No wonder the Russians were so eager to go into space. BRB. Filling out NASA application. That there are 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe, and that number is likely to at least double as Hubble goes further and observes more of the universe. It's insane to think that we live on a mere speck within the Milky Way galaxy, and that there are possibly 999 other galaxies out there, each separated by millions of light years. The enormity of the universe is mind-boggling, and that's only the observable universe. Nobody knows how many there could be past the observable bound. Probably at least, like, 20 more. Venus spins backward, whatever the direction of the other planets, when they are rotating. Venus rotates the exact opposite way. A Venus day is longer than a Venus year. Same for Mercury. If there was air in space that sound was able to travel through, at the sun's surface it would emit a deafening 290 dB, which is so loud that it pretty much transcends sound and just turns into a pressure wave. but at the Earth's surface, it would be about 120 dB, which is about as loud as standing a couple meters away from an active jackhammer. Where it gets spooky though, is that if the sun were to suddenly disappear, not only would it take a full 8 minutes for us to notice the lack of sunshine or gravity, but because the speed of sound is so comparatively slow, we would still hear the sun for another 8 years. Damn, that is spooky. I know there's an anomaly called the Bobbitt's Void. It's a gargantuan region of space with not a whole lot of stuff inside of it, right in the middle of an ocean of galaxies. It's kind of scary, in an existential way. I believe we are supposed to be on the edges of the Bobbitt's Void too. I just watched something a few days ago that said, once the Milky Way merges with Andromeda, that's pretty much it for us. We won't run into anything else, or see anything else. We'll just drift off into oblivion. The melancholy of space is just crushing sometimes. The universe is still in its very infancy. In fact, according to some studies, despite an almost infinite number of planets, 92% of all planets there will ever be have not even been formed yet. The universe is in fact so young, relatively speaking, that several types of stars have not even had enough time to exist yet. Blue dwarfs, red dwarfs that have started spending the last of its hydrogen. The first of this kind of star is not expected to exist until 1 trillion years in the future. Considering our universe is only around 13 billion years, it is going to take some time until we spot the first blue dwarf. The blue dwarf will eventually turn into a white dwarf. Black dwarfs. A white dwarf can be formed any number of ways, and we have observed a lot of them. But when a white dwarf star cools down, it starts the process of becoming a black dwarf. This process can theoretically take as little as 1 quadrillion years, or as much as 37 quadrillion years. This is the ultimate fate of our sun, and the process is going to take thousands of times longer than the universe has even existed so far. Being able to see a total solar eclipse is a sheer coincidence of timing. The moon is just large enough and just far enough away from Earth to appear to be the exact size of the sun during a total eclipse, when it covers the entire disk of the sun. Since the moon is slowly moving away from Earth, one day it will no longer appear large enough to fully cover the sun and there will be no more total eclipses. This won't happen for 600 million years though, so don't panic. Some say total solar eclipse in Earth could be a tourist attraction to an intelligent alien life. Imagine that. Aliens visiting Earth to observe solar eclipse. Space welding. In a vacuum, you don't need welding materials to get two metals to fuse. They will do it on their own if you place them close enough. But they need to be the same material, and the surface needs to be free of oxidation. Imagine having two blocks of pure aluminum or iron in a vacuum. If you touch them together they'll get stuck and fuse like a weld. Why? Because the atoms each block is made out of don't know which block they belong to. On Earth this doesn't happen due to oxygen in the atmosphere. If you scrub off the surface layer of a piece of metal, the new surface comes into contact with oxygen and oxidizes pretty much instantly. About 63 quadrillion Earths can fit in the largest discovered star. That star is also so large, if you replaced the sun with it, it would consume everything almost all the way to Saturn. It's also so unstable and big that it leaks its outer layers to its solar wind. I can't say this is my favorite space fact, for obvious reasons, but it's absolutely amazing and heartbreaking. There is verifiable evidence that at least 3 astronauts survived the initial explosion of the Challenger in 1986. Each astronaut was equipped with a personal emergency air pack, and when the shuttle cabin was recovered from the Atlantic Ocean, at least 3 of these air packs were manually activated. Yep, it's so horrifying to know that they got jolted like crazy and then just plunged at an ungodly speed to the ocean. Columbia was worse from a physics perspective in regards to the human body, I think. They were literally torn to pieces by G-force. Pretty wild way to go though. You could fit all the planets in the solar system in the space between Earth and the moon. We shouldn't, though. We must, just to prove we can. Saturn's density allows for it to float on water. If you happen to have a not so small bathtub. If you happen to have a not so small bathtub, I guess you could call it that. Due to gravitational time dilation, from the perspective of a black hole's event horizon. The event that created it only happened moments prior. But from our perspective, black holes are some of the oldest and longest living objects in the universe. And because a singularity is believed to be a point of infinite density, time is infinitely dilated at that point. So from the perspective of the singularity, it exists at only one infinitely small amount of time. With this in mind, a black hole would not be an object, it would be an event. More specifically, it'd be an explosion with such a high energy density that it warped the space and time around it and slowed it down from our perspective. So far, only 3 people have actually died in space. Russian cosmonauts who had technical difficulties disconnecting from the space station Salyut-1, opening the airlock of their shuttle, Soyuz 11, exposing them all to the vacuum of space. What happened to their bodies? Are they still orbiting the Earth? Or what? They landed but it depressurized on their way back to Earth, and when they recovered the spacecraft they found the 3 cosmonauts dead in their seats. They were given a state funeral and a proper burial. The age of the universe is not a single number, since gravity affects the flow of time. In parts of the universe with more mass than average, the universe is younger than in areas with less mass than average. I like this one. Been scrolling a while but this will stop with me. D. I just wanna know what NASA's protocol is for an astronaut dying in space. Do they send the body back to Earth on a little pod? Do they send the body out the airlock to circle the Earth forever? Put the body in a lightweight titanium coffin and weld it to an interstellar probe so that a good sample of our biology can be on hand for a first contact scenario. Well, alternatively, if the body were pushed out to another planet/moon somewhere and it landed on the surface, would the microorganisms and organic matter on the body be enough to kickstart life on another planet? If the sun dies, it'll take 8 minutes for us to realize, and yet it can take 40,000 years for a photon to travel from the center of the sun to the surface. It's a lot denser in the middle of a star than it is in space. This is a cliche, but I love the fact that most elements were formed inside the burning furnace of stars. Everything that exists, you, me, ants, bananas, rocket ships, are literally made of remnants of exploding stars. You are the universe experiencing itself, made up of material that's always been there,